this video, I'm going to turn the anime solo leveling into a game to prove something. You see, there already is a game based around solo leveling, but the game is simply an IP-based gacha game filled with microtransactions, battle passes, and loot boxes that are simply there to use the emotional attachment of the players to the characters and the world from the anime to make them spend more money on the game. So I wanted to see if a beginner game developer can make a better game if they focus only on the gameplay instead of the monetization. So with that in mind, I opened up Unity and started the project. I added the player and made him move. Next up, I added some enemies that can chase you around, but are not attacking you, aka they're not really enemies yet, so I added some ranged enemies that can actually attack you. Now that we have enemies, let's start working on the combat. I decided to go for a parry-based combat similar to Weepso's, but in 2D. I started with the parry and made it so that you shoot out a projectile when you deflect successfully, and also made a main attack. Now that we have some basic combat, I decided to start making the sprites for the game. The problem is, I'm not an artist. That's why I decided to use pixel art for my game, because how hard could it be? I mean, you have like a couple of squares, you can't really f it up that badly, right? Turns out, yeah, you can definitely f it up very badly, in fact. The sad part is, I actually spent some time learning A-Sprite for this, but all I got in the end is this thing. Also, a huge shout out to this guy for making this A-Sprite crash course, because I'm way too lazy to watch multiple tutorials to learn how to use a single program. Anyway, now we can put everything into the game and it will look normal, right? I found how to fix it after a while, and for all of you wondering what wasted me 2 hours, it was this button. Next up, I decided to work more on the combat. I started by adding some attack indicators that can help you parry at the right time, and I also made the player stun the enemies if he parries them, to make the parry even more rewarding. Also, to make the game more like solo leveling, because that's kind of the whole point of the video, I decided to add the leveling system from the anime and added the 5 stats that the main character has. After some programming, the stats work, but you can't really see that, so it was finally time to add UI to the game. Now that this is done, let's continue stealing ideas from the anime. So in the show, there are gates that have a rank from E to S that basically resemble how hard the dungeon inside will be. I thought this could work very well in a roguelike game, so that's what we're doing. But this means that I need to do procedural generation, which if you don't know is basically responsible for generating random levels for roguelikes. I tried to do it without looking up a tutorial, which was a huge mistake because I forgot I was an idiot. After a lot of trial and error, I got it working in a very scuffed way and was finally able to start creating rooms that would be randomly picked and placed at the end of the previous room. I did around 15 possible rooms, and finally I had my first ever working procedurally generated map. Except it's not really generated procedurally and it goes only in one direction, so it's not really procedurally generated at all, but we finally have a map. However, the player has no incentive to explore it, so I needed to add some items. At first, I thought I would just make different weapons, but then I remembered that in the anime there are runes that allow you to use different skills, which would be perfect for a roguelike. I started making sprites for these runes and also for a weapon for the main character, because by now he was attacking with just a red triangle. After I had the sprites for the runes, I started making them an item you can pick up and switch for another one. I made 3 categories of runes and made it so that the player can only have 1 rune per category at a time. I wanted to start creating the offensive runes, so I made 3 runes each with a different effect. A slow red bow, a fast purple bow, and 3 white bows? I guess I just need to change the rotation a little bit. Anyway, I managed to fix it after 2 hours. Yay. After that, I got tired of looking at my bad art, so I'm going to add some visual effects to hopefully make my bad pixel art less noticeable. I started by polishing the parry. For that, I needed to make an animation, a trail, and some particles when you successfully parry. I also added some post-processing, and the parry went from this on day 1 to this. I did the same thing to the attack and was pretty happy with the result. After that, I probably should have just made more progress on the gameplay or added some content because I didn't really have a game, but my brain was like XP boss, XP boss, XP boss. So I had no choice but to add XP boss. You know what? I think I made the right call because this was really cool. Like, look at this. Now it feels way more satisfying to kill monsters. Now that we added the best feature, we can start working on the other runes. I started with the mobility runes, which for now are going to be 3 dash variants, and I also worked on the utility runes, which just give you a buff for a while. That's all good and all, but you can't really get them in any way. So I made a chest that drops 1 rune randomly. I felt pretty happy with the progress I made so far, but then I saw what I needed to do next on my task list. So yeah, now we have damage numbers when you hit an enemy. The game still looked like shit though, so I decided to polish it a little bit. I started with the tiles for the map, which previously were just one color, but now they at least have some texture, which makes you feel like you're in a dungeon. It still looks like shit though. Also, the chest was literally just a rectangle, so I made a quick pixel art for it too. After that, the game was still pretty bland, so I added some visual effects for the game. Now you can more easily tell what your rune does when you use it, because previously you literally had no idea. Then I thought that the game was a little too boring with just 2 enemies, so I also added a faster melee mob. You might see some resemblance to one of the other mobs and think that he's just faster and red, and you'll be correct, I'm lazy. But also this guy destroyed me so many times, so I nerfed him to the ground, because if I can't beat my own game, how can a game journalist beat it? Next up, I started making some new rooms to make the dungeon feel a little bit more random. I should definitely work on the procedural generation more, because for now it just works in one direction and doesn't really feel very interesting, but that's for future me to figure out because I'm tired. This is a little preview of what the game looks like so far. At the start I gave myself 2 weeks to do this and just post what I did, but I kept going more and more because I wasn't satisfied with the state of the game to even post this. And to be honest, I still am not, but it's been almost a month and I think I should just post it already. So that's what I'm doing now. I thought I would be able to make so much more progress in just 2 weeks, but game dev is hard and overscoping is a real issue, especially if you want to make a bigger game. Anyway, I think the game has some potential and also I still have a point to prove, so I'll probably continue working on it and make part 2 of this video. If you have any suggestions for the game, write a comment down below, and literally 0% of you are subscribed, so be sure to subscribe.